we have people right now that are street pharmacists, right? They're selling, they're distributing, doing whatever. Then why don't we just make them legal? Why don't we make them social entrepreneurs? Why don't we make them a part of a legitimate enterprise, right? Why don't we automatically remove all of the associated ills that come with that particular culture by not only legalizing marijuana, but regulating it and taxing it, and increase the tax base at the same time, increase public safety, and when you do so, all the unlawful elements fall to fray. Now, those of us who have studied or old enough to know about Prohibition know that during Prohibition, we were at the height of violence. We had violence like you couldn't even imagine. As soon as alcohol was legalized, the violence stopped. They eliminated all the criminal elements. So if we already have a precedent set, and we already understand how to do this, why wouldn't we do this? And the question, I'm leaving that with you, why wouldn't we do something, if in fact it can bring that many benefits, why are we having such a difficult time to do something that seems to be so simple? So we're going to go to the first question first, and then we have a gentleman who's going to answer the second question. So since I'm in the front, let me get this gentleman, then I'm going to come to you in the back.
Then we want questions for them too.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So these questions are going to be posed to our panel.
I do a lot of community service work with a lot of communities, organizations, and one of the things I find that's, for me, is kind of like strange is that a lot of people don't know what the word community means. If you look at everybody in this room, and ask each one of us, which Dr. Devine did, what community are you involved with? Are you involved with the Bronx? Then I look at all the community boards. What I'm suggesting, Councilwoman, is that I know that government and private business, they work differently. Private business is always looking for profit, efficiency, and they involve in research. I'm suggesting that the city of New York needs to look at its demographics of each community board.
Okay. Okay, so he made a suggestion that the city council, you have a speaker. Okay, so we have someone in the back, and that's an excellent point. Thank you for pointing that out. We have a gentleman who's going to actually respond to the question that I posed in the beginning. Sir?
So I'm posing this question to the XO. And you spoke earlier to the crew cut operation by NYPD to remove these crews, the violent crews. So you made mention of some of your innovative approaches to remove one or two, the hardcore members of these organizations in these different communities, and then allowing the other youth to stay there. But in April, 3 Wednesdays in a row, you incarcerated over 112 young people from various communities in the Bronx. So my question is, if your tactic is to eliminate the one or two, how do we have 112 young individuals now being prosecuted for gang activity in the Bronx? Second part of that question, in the Morehouses development, there were 2 major indictments from 2012 where 21 young people were arrested, and in 2014, but I think it's like 46. So in the same community where you're saying you're cutting off the head of the gang and then reinvesting in the young people, how do we see that happening in our housing developments in the councilwoman's district? Well, in the South Bronx district, some of the councilwomen. Can you respond to that?
Absolutely. I'll talk about the recent one, the 2 different crews that were taken out. There were actually 3 different crews that were taken out in part of that. One was 164th Street and Prospect Avenue. I think 23 guys. Now, when you take a look at the prosecutions on these ones, this is taken by the Bronx police, probably 10 to 12 of them are going to go very heavily. During the course of this investigation, the 2-year investigation, we have numerous conversations between these guys talking about going out and shooting the guys over at forest houses. Back and forth, who's got the gun? I went over there today, I popped rounds at them. Each and every one of these guys are involved taking a gun out, getting a gun, and shooting at someone, which included the murder of a 5-year-old child over in the forest houses. That is included in that indictment. On the other end was the forest guys. I think we took 10 out of the forest guys. Those guys, same thing. Conversations going back, shooting the guys from 164th Street. Who's got the gun? Who's got it? Who's firing today? Who are we going to go after? All basically attempted murders with a complete and total disregard for anyone else who was out on the street. The other one, the Mac Fowler case, which was over in the 4-2 precinct in housing. This didn't just encompass shootings there, it encompassed shootings up in Binghamton and throughout New York State. Also, the violence that was going on in Rikers Island over the course of last year, which was a major issue, stabbings, all involved these Mac Ballers that were in prison at the time. So a lot of those indictments that you read were guys who were already indicted in prison for shootings and robberies that were now stabbing other guys from the Blackstone Guerrillas because, well, that's a different gang, a different crew, and they have to create dominance. So that was a 60-person indictment that covered not just the Bronx, it covered Brooklyn, Staten Island, and Binghamton. Again, some was taken by the Bronx District Attorney, others were taken by the federal authorities. And then you're going back to the Moorehouses. If you go back 2-3 years ago, quite a few shootings of young kids going back and forth, MMGs, the Moore Murder Gang. That's what they called themselves. I think we tied in that case, and that's a federal prosecution, which a lot of the guys involved become cooperators or profits on a federal prosecution and talk about basically the murders that these guys did back and forth. The crews that were taken out there, extremely violent, all involved. They were not arrested unless there was something tying them to shooting at a person. So that's why those crews went down the way they did. What we want to do is the other 70-some-odd crews are out there, before everyone else gets involved, start removing the worst. I'll give you a great example of a community helping out in the 4th precinct over the last week. A guy, I'll give you his name, Robert Wilson. He's from Stevenson Commons. Had a long-standing dispute with the Monroe houses. We got calls from a community person. Robert Wilson's out on the street. He's ready to go shoot a guy from Monroe houses. The guy fine. We went out there that night. We caught Robert Wilson with the gun. And now the feds are going to take a look at doing him. He's a guy we want just removed from the community because he's going to do a shooting. If we get that, then we don't really have to look at the other guys from Stevenson Commons. Otherwise, what we're going to have right now is the guys from Monroe and Stevenson Commons shooting one another back and forth, and everyone is going to get scooped in because they're going to get somehow involved by getting the gun, giving the gun, or being handed the gun by someone like a Robert Wilson to do the shooting. So we want to try and get it before it has to come a big takedown like we've had to do with some of these other crews and their historical violence.
And I think that the commander raises an excellent point. See, we don't have to wait till a situation escalates to the point where there's going to be a loss of life. I think that we have to do what's called nipping it at the bud. That's the reason why this conversation is going to be a multifaceted conversation, because we can't get to all of it today. But see, there's some other questions that we need to ask. Number one, how are so many guns finding their way in our community? Number one. Number two, why are they so easily accessible to young people? Right? Why are they so cheap? But then the other question is, why would any person, younger or older, feel the need to have to use a gun to resolve a dispute? Why do people value life so little that how dare someone think that they can take someone else's life? So we have some much deeper issues that even if we address the issue of the guns, even if we address the issue of how they got in our community and so forth, the other issue is if it's not going to be guns, it's going to be knives. It's not going to be knives, it's going to be bats. So the deeper issue is that propensity, that somehow the people have the desire to resolve their conflicts and their misunderstandings by resorting to violence. And we have to, what's that all about? So we have to ask that question as a community. Now, I want questions to be posed to the panel while they're here, because we don't know how much time we have with them. So any questions that you have for the panel, no, you already asked yours, but I got to give somebody else a shot. But I will get back to you, okay? I'll definitely get back to you. Let me get this young man up here, and we'll get back to you. We'll let you close out.
Just a question in terms of and the NYPD has a commission that goes into our schools, the school safety division. It's been critiqued because at this point there's more police officers in our schools than there are guidance counselors or social workers for that matter. And so I pose this question to either panelist. If you could explain to us the role that this division is playing in our schools, its prevalence, and what the future of it looks like, and truly the impact that it's having now in our schools.
It's a negative impact.
Well, again, it's mainly it's not so much the police officers, but school safety officers that are in there. We have some police officers in some of the more problematic schools, but mainly every command, and they're under us, the school safety officers, the unarmed guards that are responding. It was something that was looked at late last year. I know it hit the papers, the amount of arrests that we're doing in the schools, and I know we're making a concerted effort, again, to limit it. We don't want to take these kids in. It's really, it's not what our purpose is. It's not what our goal is. You know, the school safety officers are there to basically keep it safe. If incidents happen, to respond, to break the fight up, send the kids to a principal's office, not to a precinct station house. So that's kind of the message that we're sending forward to the school safety officers. You know, obviously, if something transcends into something bigger, someone gets stabbed or a weapon makes it into the school, absolutely. But for a straight fight in the school, we really aren't looking to make these arrests, and we're encouraging the schools to kind of do what it did in my day, you know, give you a quick slap on the ass by the principal or something just to keep things straight, not to bring it into a law enforcement sort of issue.
Is there going to be some community oversight, more community oversight for that division?
Of course not.
So right now there's a campaign that's already started called Dignity in Schools campaign. And a lot of advocates, a lot of the parent leaders have already started to organize. I can speak from personal knowledge because a lot of the arrests and suspensions in the Bronx were really heavy in District 9, which is most of the South and the West Bronx that I represent. And so from District 9, it came into a Bronx campaign to address School District 7 all the way through 12. So there are a couple of things that the campaign is looking to do, looking at some of the chancellor regulations as it relates to how we address some of the incidents that young people engage in our schools, how we can fight against the policy that really says that a lot of kids are either arrested or suspended for minor, I don't want to say infractions, but minor incidents. And then also from a resource perspective,